Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, unless you're watching live. This is LMC Live for Tuesday the 19th? Must be, right? So, started doing some YouTube shorts rather than try to plan out much longer videos. And the studio cat is complaining about something, even though he's been fed and watered and dry food and wet food and every little type that he wants, plus treats and catnip. But so here we are, and we've been talking about OS2. Everything's been made, so let's restart this computer and see what happens. I want to thank Sergio, if he happens to be watching this, for hooking me up with the VGA card originally that we put in this thing. So there were two flavors of this. There was the IBM branded flavor and the Microsoft branded flavor, which is what we have now for the disk images. I've always wanted an IBM PCAT that sat in its standing tower option, because you could get it in a tower. It's really kind of convoluted how it's in there, but people have asked, well, why don't you just swap your 5 1/4 and your 3.5 inch drive around? And the answer to that really is, it's like taking the engine out of your car, at least in terms of computers. To, all right, take the system unit out, and then you actually have to take the system unit, apart. It's not like, oh, the tower conversion kit itself is the cover. No, it's not. So the Microsoft branded version of OS2 is the only one that you have images for that I could find. So that's what we're using. I'll give you a moment to read the text if you want. I'm just going to go glance over it myself really quickly. We're not going to be dual booting. And we'll proceed. Well, one thing I'm curious about, we're going to go to the command prompt and see if there is a similar utility. Oh. Sorry about that. Don't want to waste any time. We'll just go through and install it as quickly as we possibly can without repartitioning the disk. So one of the why I want to use this version is OS2 from 1.0 to 1.3 were the only versions that would run on a 286, which of course this PCAT is, and haven't upgraded it. This version 1.2 is the first version, I believe, that comes with the GUI, which when we get there, you're going to notice how similar it looks to Windows 3.0. Of course, you're probably thinking, well, duh, Microsoft was the development partner. Okay, first disk. Don't mind the whiny cat. Going to accept US keyboard. We are going to format the, whoops, let me get that, we're back in position and actually tighten up the tripod. We are going to format the partition, high performance. And we'll see how long it takes to format a 20 or 30 meg hard disk. I honestly really don't remember how big the hard drive is in this PC-AT. I think it's 30. I know one of the projects, if you go back and look at the videos with this, my personal favorite version of DOS to use with the AT or the PS2 Model 25 is DOS 3.3. Just, it's got that feel for me. For a PC or a PC or an XT, it's DOS 2.1. However, the limits of DOS for hard drive partition sizes is 32 megabytes. So, if you've got DOS 3.3, how can you squeeze out more than 32 megabytes? Well, there was a trick to that, and we did cover it, and it was using a third-party utility called Superstore. And welcome you to check out that video. We did a video on that as well. Either the cat finds this very exciting or very boring. No, not 30. Only 8. It wasn't. It wasn't a lot. 8 high density 1.2 meg floppies was what was necessary to install this version of OS2. Now, if you want a newer version, which you need a 386 or better for, that's going to require a little bit more number of floppies. One thing that we did get recently, even though this is not really related to what we're doing right now, was somebody had a stack of floppy disks for Zenith Data Systems, and they were, the ad was mislabeled, not the discs, and it included the Zenith versions of the diagnostic disc for the Z200 PC, which we had a really long time ago. The Zenith version of MS-DOS 3.3 that came on 3 discs. But the creme de la creme, I thought, was, and I'll just go put this in front of the camera really quick while we're waiting for OS2 to format the hard disk, and that was Windows 1.04, the original media. And that only came on, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 360K floppies. And then additionally, in the stack of Zenith floppies, they had Windows version 2.10, was Windows 286, and that was also on 360K floppies, and that came on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 floppies. And we did do a video on that. I invite you to check that out too. Really didn't remember formatting this drive taking that long. The hard drive indicator is on, and you might be able to hear the slight clicking noise. Not a death click, but just the hard drive stepper motor moving the heads inside the drive, which most people into retro computing will tell you it's the exception, not the rule, that the spinning rust. It works, and the crown jewel of our IBM equipment, which I don't have here at this location, is the IBM PC 5150, which we have the official IBM expansion unit that goes with it, and that inside of that has 2 full height 20 meg hard drives, and those still work. And we've done a lot of videos with that system. You'll be able to tell if you find it exciting or not. We did like 10 minutes of just the ambient sound of the machine and the expansion with 2 hard drives. It kind of sounds like you're flying in a jet. There we go. US. VGA display adapter. Yep, no other adapters are attached. I'm going to assume this is the right one. We are using a Microsoft serial mouse, and hopefully it's plugged into the right, that this is what it needs. Serial version 056. Well, yep, we're going to say yes. And the reason I say that, if you've watched our other videos, you know that I have an Apple ImageWriter 2 printer with the sheet feeder attachment. That's serial, and we do have the cable that will allow us to attach it to a PC. I'm just going to turn the chimer off our clock. I will say one thing, at least with the versions of Windows, you had an idea of just how far along you were, at least on the particular disk. But we have 6 more disks to go through after this one, so let's hope it transfers fast. Okay, time for disk 2. Some people would say, why don't you emulate it? And I'm like, that seems to be done a lot. We prefer to do it on the real hardware. And something I've noticed recently in the retro hobbyist community, which I do like, if you don't have the real spinning rust of the machine, they have new storage solutions. You've got the XT IDE, which really isn't designed for the 286 and up, but that will work in here. That's good. It's a solid state solution. You have a GoTech USB adapters, which you trade out your floppy. Use USB stick, and that's novel, but just like this right now, it says we prefer to use the real media on spinning rust whenever we can. That's right. Wonder if we should take bets. All right, disc 3. Now, one of the things I'll be looking forward to, but won't be doing tonight, is we have a copy of Microsoft Excel for OS2 that came out of Computer Reset. Now, we've done an unwrapping already. We've looked to see what's inside the box. Let me, we'll get the box over there. Now, what I find a little bit deceptive is when you look at the box, if I can get it in front of there, it'll say, complete spreadsheet with business graphics and database. And I'm like, I'd like to know what the database part of it is. And we'll be able to find out. The other thing I want to try, although it's probably been attempted before and going to not install for us, there's enough RAM in this machine. There's about 6 megabytes of RAM across 2.5 expansion cards, plus there's also 2 megabytes of EMS memory. Is a project that we're doing for the video disk library. Is we're developing a new database that will have a lot of cool features in it, but the period specific software we're using apparently had problems with corruption in the index tables. So after dealing with that for too much, it's living in a spreadsheet right now, and we are going to eventually move it into the first version of Access, which the first version of Access demands a 386, which don't have, but maybe if we run it in compatibility mode, the Windows layer of OS2, that it might run anyway. Alright, disc 4. There are 2 driver discs also, but as you read in the first screen and setup, don't think that's going to be a problem. So one of the things I find interesting is you look on eBay, you look on Facebook Marketplace, all the stores, and I have yet to find this version of OS2 on 5 1/4 inch media in the wild. Like I said, I've only been able to find the images in some of the sites. However, if you do go onto eBay or whatnot and you find OS2 2.0 on 5 1/4 inch, but I'm like, you wouldn't need it on that format because most likely the IBM 386 or higher that you're running it on doesn't have a 5 1/4 inch disk drive in the first place. And if it did have one, it's not your boot drive, so you wouldn't be able to essentially install that version of OS2 anyway. But like they say, it might have been a superior operating system at the time when compared to MS DOS based Windows and MS DOS, but IBM really messed up when they allowed Microsoft to license DOS to them versus buy it outright. They should have said, nope, we want exclusivity of the operating system, and if you're not going to give it to us, see you later. But we know what happened with that. All right, Disk 5, let's hope it goes fast. Well, it wasn't my first choice for databases for the video disk library, but wanted something that there was a lot of documentation, a lot of help, even in terms of taking something that might be available in a newer version of Access and being able to backport it to the closest period specific version of Access we can get, which is, really early 90s, maybe 1990, 91, which is even outside the realm of when the video disc system was released. But you do what you've got to do. There were other DOS based relational databases we could have used, like, DBase or, but getting that software with the legitimate documentation, it's pretty pricey. I haven't found a low cost version of that we could acquire and maybe do an unwrapping or a demo of, versus you can still find shrink wrapped copies of Access 1.0, which you can run on Windows 3, 3.0 at that, for $25. The other one other thought I had was IBM had this really high end software called Data Edition, which was what a lot of people think is they ported their mainframe database over to PC, and it is really high end, but so high end it makes the enable OA we were using for the database look like Windows, and I was like, no. Plus, having it on a computer system that we could use where the library physically is, I'd have to buy one of those IBM personal portable computers, put an XT IDE in it, which might be a project if we get any donations now, because that is a nice piece of hardware, even though it might not necessarily be practical even for a retro museum. Yes, eventually, but what was Data Edition based from? Okay, now we've got to put the installation disk back in, so I will do that. Curious to see how much uncompressed space this will take up. Well, I've looked at Ecom Station and Arca OS, which is the latest iteration of OS 2 that IBM has licensed, to overseas developers, and I think it's pretty impressive for how it's extended OS 2. But for example, you can run it on a 64-bit processor, but it's running in 32-bit mode, so you can only use up to 4 gigabytes of RAM. It does have Firefox available for it, so you can actually use it for legitimate web browsing. Knowing what I know now, I would agree. Um, I'm not sure if this is it, but going to try it and see what happens. Yes, and I would certainly agree with that as well. But remember, Microsoft was giving away the software development kit for nothing, no additional charge, where IBM wanted a big chunk of money for their SDK. So it's installed. It told us to reboot. We're going to reboot. Excuse me. Beg your pardon, everybody. Kind of a frog stuck in my throat. So there is a problem with this Dell Ultra Sharp monitor. And yes, the mouse is working, even though I don't have a good mouse pad for it right now. Now that's pretty cool that somebody at VCF had it. And wow, there's nothing. There's no additional setup or whatnot. All we have is the desktop manager, which looks a lot like the program manager in Windows 3. And we have, of course, we have main and utilities. We're going to open main back up. We have a file manager, OS2 window, OS2 full screen, the system editor, and then, of course, the command reference that we installed. Then we have the DOS prompt. Oh. Really? All right, Control Escape brings us to a task list. We can switch to this, but we can't end it. And like, all right, that's fine. Let's open up utilities. And of course, we've got a control panel, printer installer, copy, compare, label, format, disks. We've got disk information. Oh, there's the fixed disk utility, print picture, display picture, and convert picture file. Well, let's check out the control panel. And all it is time, date, cursor, and double click. Options. Oh, screen colors. Does anything come up with that? All right. So we could go through and change the schemes, but we have to do it manually. They don't actually have one. Like, ocean, rugby, whatever. If I can get the mouse over there. We'll cancel it. Start using keyboard shortcuts, make it a little bit faster. Oops. Okay. Logo display, I'm not sure what that is or does. We'll close out of the control panel. I'm not going to do the printer installer, but this is OS2 1.2 with the GUI. And I think we're probably going to call it a night. The only thing I am really kind of curious is how we end up shutting down, if we even shut down. Let's see here. Does this work better? Slightly. So it looks like there's no way. Oh, there it is. Desktop. Shut down. Yep, we're going to shut down all the running programs. So one thing with the PCAT, because the spinning rust is so old, is I've got the Advanced Diagnostics disk. I do like to park the heads. Maybe OS2 does that, and you can confirm more if it does it or not, but just in case it doesn't, or we don't know, boot out the diagnostics disk and park the heads. And we'll hope you join us in the next video where we're going to install that Microsoft Excel for OS2. If you like this sort of content, I hope you like the video and subscribe. We'll make it public shortly. And if you really, really like it, consider checking out the Patreon, patreon.com/LMC Unwrapped, and becoming a patron. And people often will think, well, what do you use the money for? What do you use the money for? And don't use the money necessarily for me or living expenses, but rather to buy the equipment and do the videos with it. So thanks again. We'll see you in the next video, and have a good night, good day, good week.